Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at the internal bleeding mod. This is the rifle counterpart to the pistol version Hemorrhage, which I covered yesterday. These are essentially impact proc Hunter Munitions, where you have a 35% chance to apply slash effect upon an impact status proc. Now you'll probably remember how I showed the pistol version yesterday was pretty niche and didn't have that many applications. However, the rifle version is a completely different story. There's a couple of weapons that can really take advantage of this, and I'll soon show you why. Weapons with force impact procs shine here, especially the ones with heavy damage. First, we're going to take a look at the primary Tombfinger. I've built this Tombfinger to have just under 2.5 fire rate so that we can get the double effect from the internal bleeding mod. In theory, this should make it better than Hunter's Munitions since it would proc 70% of the time instead of 30%. Now this weapon I had pretty big hopes for beforehand, but I quickly learned that there was a problem. The damage that scales off for the slash proc is the component that has an impact proc. Tombfinger has force impacts, but only on the initial hit and not the radial explosion. On the secondary version, this is okay because it's a pretty 50-50 split across the two damage components, but on the primary weapon, most of it is backloaded onto the explosion. Only about 20% of the damage is found on the initial shot that has impact, so you'll see it doesn't actually work out that well. Now I didn't know this at first, which is why I continued building the weapon up. I have a massive amount of primed cryo rounds here, and I'm not focusing on status because I know that there's a force impact proc on the shot. For the arcane, I'm sticking with Pax Charge because I learned Seeker does not work since the slash procs cannot trigger this. You have to directly kill it with a headshot itself, which you most likely won't be doing since most of your damage you would be expecting to come from your slash procs. So let's spawn in these heavy gunners and test. I'm going to be shooting the head in every single one of these tests. You'll see I'm shooting the heads and it's a little bit slow and unreliable. Although it's proccing a lot, the damage from the bleed really isn't that much. And that's how I learned that it's only taking the damage from the initial impact here. Now if I swap this out for Hunter Munitions instead and come back to shoot, you'll notice it isn't proccing as often, but I'm still getting pretty big ticks, and that's because it's scaling off any crits instead, which includes the total explosion damage, which is the majority of my damage. So let's take a look at another weapon. Nagantaka is the first example where it is able to scale off the slash procs from the total damage of the weapon. Now this is a very interesting choice. Nagantaka has very high slash and fairly high status as well. It doesn't have massive crit, so it isn't able to take full advantage of Hunter's Munitions. So now that you have a weapon that has high base slash, it also has force impact procs, and I want to see what else you can do. Once again, these forced impact procs mean I don't have to worry about the weight of elemental damage on the weapon, and I can just build up full viral to maximize my chances of proccing viral there. When I take my single shots, you'll see I have a very easy time proccing slash. However, the weapon is nowhere near as strong as the Tombfinger from earlier, but at the very least I'm able to tap the heads about 3 or 4 times, and then the resulting bleed procs are enough to completely take out these heavy gunners. Alternatively, I can use the alt fire as a mag dump, but if I aim at the head, it's a little bit hard to aim with a stagger on the enemy and I'm bound to miss a couple shots. Luckily, you can actually just dump this into the body as well. Now let's switch over to the internal bleeding setup. You'll immediately notice I have a lot more consistent slash procs coming out, and this is due to the low fire rate of the weapon and double dipping on the proc rate of the mod at 70%. This is a huge difference, and you'll notice that I'm just getting a lot more ticks, and it makes it more consistent. Even on the alt fire, the enemy is already almost dead before I finish pulling it off. Now one interesting application for this is the Nagantaka is considered a bow, so if you run critical delay on this, you actually end up getting about minus 80% on the fire rate. But this is okay because the alt fire preserves a fixed amount of fire rate on the weapon, and you'll continue to get the high amount of procs. You'll also carry the extra crit chance that you're getting from the mod, going all the way up to 43.1, and this is really apparent here, especially on that alt fire where the heavy gunner was already dead before I finished dumping my shots. So in this case, you're able to take full advantage of the extra crit with 0 penalties. However, this will really gimp out your single fire shot if you choose to play it in that game mode. Next, let's take a look at Daikyu. This is our single shot bow that is notoriously known for one-shotting enemies on a slash build. Normally you'd run Hunter's Munitions here, but today I'm going to show you how much more of a monster it actually is with internal bleeding. It's actually way stronger, and we'll soon see why. Although it doesn't have that much of an impact weighting like the other weapons I showed earlier, once again Daikyu is a weapon that has forced impact procs. This means I can build up as much damage as I want. However, because it is a bow and I need to charge each shot, I still want a lot of status, so I won't be running primed cryo rounds, and I'm running the 260-60 mods instead so I can hit 100 status. Now you can even see here with the single slash and viral proc, it's enough to eat up most of the health with the first slash. 2 ticks will just completely delete the enemies. Swapping this out for Hunter's Munitions on the other hand really shows how internal bleeding pulls ahead. The damage on the procs are pretty much the same, the initial damage on the bow is also the same. However, you have much more of a problem actually proccing the slash, as you only have 30%, whereas you had 70 when you're running internal bleeding. So I'm going to stick to running internal bleeding on our Daikyu. Now let's take a look at another similar weapon. This is the Kuva Chakurr, which is basically a Daikyu that does not need to load up every single shot and charge. Now if I was running this as an impact Chakurr, I would actually have about a 40% distribution on impact when I have even more slash procs. These heat procs here are nice and let me apply a follow-up shot, however they don't amplify my slash procs in any way, and all it serves is to dilute the amount of slash I get. It's going to contribute heat procs, which my slash procs will not benefit from because they ignore armor. Once again, because it has forced impact procs, I'm not forced to build up the status, however it is a little bit on the lower side and I really want those viral procs. Therefore, I'm going to be using 60-60 mods again instead of using primed cryo rounds. So let's test this thing out. You'll see a single shot to the head is enough to kill these enemies. Either I'm going to get a single big proc or I'm going to get 2 smaller procs depending on if I'm getting an orange or yellow crit. Being above 100% crit rate guarantees that I have a 30% chance to proc slash always. However, you'll see here I even failed to proc slash on that second gunner there. Now let's swap over to internal bleeding instead. You'll immediately notice that this fire rate is only 1.17, which means I have a 70% chance to proc slash on a weapon that has forced impact. On top of that, the weapon still has a sizable amount of impact itself, which means I can actually proc a second slash proc off a single shot. This means I can get up to 4 impact procs as I have 1.9 multi-shot. They pretty much always die on the first tick. Finally, I have one last fun weapon to show you. This is the Queller. Now on an initial build, this weapon has a very low fire rate on the alt fire and only passable on the primary fire. I can't really prime properly with viral and it takes forever to shoot the alt fire. So this first build, I'm actually running viral acceleration on it, which means I don't have the mod slots to run viral. So instead I'm going pure slash and I'm slotting in bladed rounds as the single contributing mod instead of viral. You'll see I have a huge amount of damage as impact here relative to the cold around 40%, and this is okay because once again Queller has a forced impact proc on the alt fire, so I'm technically double dipping getting a chance to get a second slash proc on any alt fire that comes out. As I can't build for viral, there are no elements on this build and it is just pure slash and damage. So let's test this out. As I shoot the first heavy gunner, you'll see it took 2 ticks to kill him, but once I've procced my bladed rounds, they just die immediately on the first tick from the amplified crit damage while I continue to aim. Now if you're willing to tolerate the slower fire rate, you can actually build viral on this weapon, and this is where you lose viral acceleration, but you get the ability to prime your enemies if you choose to do so. As I don't have bladed rounds, this means my initial shots on subsequent enemies are weaker, but if you choose to proc viral, they will get significantly stronger than the original build. You can patch up to slower fire rate with arcane acceleration, which will allow you to get the same feel on the build as the previous one. However, the previous one does not rely on arcanes. I really want as much status as possible so that I have the option to prime enemies, which is why I choose to run 260-60s here and not primed cryo rounds. As I said before, the impact component will add into the possible amount of slash procs from internal bleeding, but because I have a forced impact proc, I don't need to worry as much about the weighting, and that's why I went 60/60s instead of running prime cryo. Now you'll see a single shot of them is enough to take them out in one tick so long as viral actually procs on the shot. If it doesn't, it takes 2 ticks instead. But the nice thing is I do have the option to prime up their heads beforehand here. Once again, I do need arcane acceleration, or in this case, Wisp's haste motes, to preserve the feeling of the weapon I had earlier. My damage is way higher with the prep, nearly one-shotting the enemies and getting procs in the 200 to 300k range. If I put too many on, I just straight up kill them with the upfront damage. This has a much higher damage ceiling than the raw crit build. Now I actually have the ribbon for the Queller, so I can show you a couple fun things I can do with this today. This ribbon here has crit chance, crit damage, and reload on it, meaning I no longer need to worry about the lengthy reload of the Queller, and I don't need to rely on synth weapons. Being able to compress crit chance and crit damage onto one slot means I can once again bring vial acceleration on the build. As you can see here, it once again has that very smooth handling I had earlier where I get pretty much one-shots from a single tick. I can get the ultimate power from this weapon by choosing to not run vial acceleration and double dipping on crit damage and slotting in vital sense again. This will reach the point where I could pretty much one-shot these heavy gunners completely without even having to prime at all. So long as there's a single viral stack on it, it just completely deletes them without needing any slash procs to come out. This is the highest possible damage build I can get on this, and will scale the highest in the end, but I do once again have a reliance on haste motes and arcane acceleration. I would say if you're looking for ribbonless builds, Kuva Chakurr comes out the most ahead because it doesn't have a reliance on fire rate mods to function properly. Queller is held a little bit back by its charged fire mechanic, but does have a higher ceiling on being able to set up and prime viral with its primary fire. If you do have a ribbon, it really pulls ahead by letting you not have to rely on vial acceleration anymore on the build. 66.9% of you are not subscribed to this channel. Why not subscribe? It'll let you keep up with all of the build updates and all the other uploads I'll be posting on this mainline. If this is your first time watching, smash that like button and let me know what you think down in the comments. Thank you all for watching and see you all next time.